Hi everyone, my name is Daisy Dowdall and I am a librarian at the Faculty of Information, University of Toronto. Today I'll be reflecting on the process of moving a 140 session workshop series online, which I did over the summer in response to COVID. This presentation will outline some of the best practices related to facilitating online library training that I learned along the way, review our students' perspectives of online library learning, and end with some key facts and figures and a suggestion for library folks involved in e-learning. Right, so we can't see each other this year. That's me in Hawaii in 2018. And you can see my contact information. I'll also have this at the final slide. So first, a bit of background. I mentioned the 140 session workshop series that I moved online. This series is called iSkills. iSkills address academic, professional, and technical skills for students studying information sciences. We have everything from workshops to addressing sexual harassment in the workplace and running glam social media accounts to ones on Adobe Creative Cloud and Raspberry Pi. All workshops depend heavily on hands-on learning, and I have included the link to our website if you want to learn more. So on to the meat of my presentation. March happened. And as it became clearer that fall 2020 would be online, I was faced with the following question. How do we reimagine a workshop series characterized by its reliance on face-to-face hands-on learning in a virtual learning environment? In other words, iSkills, but make it virtual. So first, some of the major assumptions I had going in. I proceeded as though demand would be normal. iSkills, while popular, are totally optional, so it was a leap of faith. I also decided that some face-to-face workshops could not be brought online, either because it would cost too much, Adobe would cost us $20K, for example, or because it would require access to specialized hardware or tools like an Arduino's workshop. I also felt that instructors would need much more guidance than in previous terms, including seasoned instructors. So I decided to create a quick start e-learning guide for instructors that included information about technology and e-pedagogy. And this guide was totally free of U of T jargon, important because most of our instructors are external. I also chose to allocate a lot of my summer to supporting instructors as they designed their workshops. So it turned out that reimagining iSkills didn't require a huge shift in the program like I had anticipated. What it did require, though, was being very thoughtful and deliberate about how we used online learning technology. Just because we could theoretically have 250 students in a workshop did not mean that was a good idea. I chose to keep workshops small because I still wanted students to have the one-on-one instructor interactions. I also decided that workshops would remain highly interactive. That's students' favorite part of the series. And so I provided instructors with a myriad of digital tools to help engage students. And I spent a lot of time experimenting with activities with instructors. And finally, I decided workshops would be mostly synchronous, but encouraged instructors to provide materials for students to work through in advance of their sessions. And I promoted this synchronous asynchronous model because I thought that it would be a great way to prevent Zoom fatigue, both on behalf of instructors and on behalf of students. So that was the shape of iSkills going into the fall. Of course, fall was still a huge learning curve. And so I'd like to share what I learned over the course of the term, which will hopefully help you as you complete your e-learning projects. So when it comes to designing or prepping for a workshop, some best practices, avoid organizing sessions over 3 hours. Students will not tolerate anything longer. You can break your workshop into multiple sessions if need be. Mic and camera test meaningfully. So many students complained about muffled audio tripping them up. And so meaningful testing involves opening up all the applications and using the internet connection that you plan on using during your live session. There are tons of guides online if you find you're having audio or video issues. But also learn how to dial into your session with your phone. If audio issues persist, or if on the day of something just happens, you'll be able to mute yourself on your computer and call in with your phone to your session. And also, if you're administering a session, that is organizing it but not actually teaching it, plan to be present for the first 10 minutes and also 10 minutes before. This sounds like a big commitment, but I promise you it's worth it. You can help instructors and students settle in, resolve any last-minute tech issues. Students and instructors really appreciate the FaceTime. So pivoting to best practices for online workshop instruction. Keep slide content to a minimum. Students will have multiple windows open. This is an example of what their screen will look like if they have just your presentation and a Word document open. And of course, they might have more depending on what you're teaching. Also, state how you want students to engage, raising hands, chat, emoji, just picking up, whatever, and reiterate your preference throughout. Different instructors require different things from students, so they appreciate the reminder. Incorporate a variety of interactive tools. Here are some tools that instructors used to great effect during Fall 2020 iSkills. Feel free to screenshot. I'm not going to go over them. I don't have enough time, unfortunately. And check in with students frequently. Of course, you can't see their faces, you can't see their body languages, so just ask for an emoji, that suggests how they're feeling. And finally, don't go over time. Just because we're all at home doesn't mean students don't have anything to do. When workshops went significantly over time, I always heard about it. So those were some of the best practices that I cobbled together from fall term. Now I'd like to shift to student perspectives about online iSkills. These are perspectives that I gathered through a series of surveys that I sent out to students. So the positives, students liked the lack of commute, especially when the weather was bad or during weekends. For some students, online workshops were more accessible than face-to-face workshops. One student noted in an evaluation that the ability to attend the workshop from home enabled them to attend even on bad pain days. Another accessibility issue, online workshops caused many students much less anxiety than face-to-face workshops, both in terms of participating, but also even just attending. Students also liked that they could multitask while attending, which arguable, but they felt as much. There were references to doing chores and to eating while attending. And finally, they liked that they could chat with their peers throughout the session, particularly when it came to clarifying quick points without interrupting the instructor. Of course, there were also some negatives. There were a lot of connectivity issues. So a surprising number of students had poor internet. Also, some instructors had poor internet. Students also reported trouble focusing, particularly when they were sharing workspaces with family and roommates. And they complained that they weren't able to network with instructors in the same way as they had in previous terms. There was no way to go up to the instructor at the end of the session and chat for a couple of minutes one-on-one. Because our workshops were synchronous, some students experienced virtual jet lag if they were in different time zones. And of course, Zoom fatigue. One student in an evaluation said that the lack of face-to-face time this term was deeply depressing. So looking at these negatives, what I saw was some things that I couldn't fix. The pandemic was happening and it was bigger than me, but there were also things I could fix, like making sure that instructors had, decent internet going in. I've reviewed some of the major takeaways from fall term, both in terms of best practices for holding online workshops and in terms of how students received online instruction. Now for some facts and figures that were gratifying on their own, but also told me that overall, the reimagining work that I did over the summer was effective. So 2,234 students attended workshops in fall 2020, up from roughly 1,000 in fall 2019. So students are attending, and they're attending in record numbers. 94% of students were either satisfied or very satisfied with online offerings. And here's the big one. 81% of students want some workshops to remain online post-pandemic, which is interesting. And I think really aligns with the perspective that e-learning isn't just the easier or cheaper version of instruction, but is actually a viable and even preferable substitute for traditional face-to-face learning in some areas. I'm going to shift gears a bit with my final figure, which doubles as my parting insight. 32% of students rated instructors' attitude as the most important factor for whether a workshop could be taught online, which really surprised me at first, because it means that 32% of respondents think that attitude, much more than really tangible things like software or hardware requirements, determine a workshop success as a remotely delivered session. But the more I thought about it, I realized that, back in March, these students saw all their classes go online, even ones that nobody thought could. So as we all look down the barrel of winter term and think about how we're going to meet students' needs online, I'd argue that if you're willing to sell what you're doing with enthusiasm, confidence, and if you're willing to try new things, students will be inclined to value your attempt. And this grace may only be extended during the pandemic. I suspect that is partly the case because students are harsh critics, but it also means that now is the perfect time to try new things. It doesn't have to be a whole $15,000 workshop series. It can be small if your bandwidth or budget is small, but I really think it would be a waste of opportunity not to experiment a bit. This is e-learning's big moment after all, so I really encourage you to do so. It worked for us overall. Again, here's my contact information.
Hi, my name is Fiona Munroe, and I'm a liaison librarian at Ontario Tech University and Durham College. Today I'm going to talk about our development of asynchronous reference training in advance of a switch to a shared service desk. This presentation was also created by my colleagues Kaelan Caspary and Kate Gibbings. For some background, Durham College and Ontario Tech University share library services, and the library on the main campus serves both student populations. Up until March 2020, if you walked into our library, you would have seen a circulation desk on one side of the lobby and a reference desk on the other. The circulation desk was staffed by members of the Access Services team, 7 technicians and 1 supervisor, and the reference desk was staffed by 2 part-time technicians, 2 full-time technicians, and 6 liaison librarians. Both the university and the college each have a branch library on other campuses, and those 2 libraries already have shared service desks. When new staff members join the reference team, librarian or technician, responsibility for training these team members to work on the reference desk fell to the reference librarians. There was no formal training program, and it could vary quite considerably from person to person. The only constant that people would be referred to was the reference binder, a collection of workflows, handy information, and tips that lived in the top drawer. A transition to a shared service desk had been tentatively planned for fall 2020 for a variety of reasons, ranging from staff efficiency to freeing up space on our ground floor. It became clear in the spring that if the library reopened in the fall to students, a move to one service desk would mean fewer staff had to be on site at the same time. It would also mean that students coming in for assistance wouldn't have to travel between the 2 desks, depending on their query. We also realized that if the library reopened, it was likely that the reference librarians would continue to work from home. That brings us to the question we faced at the beginning of May. How are we going to remotely train Access Services technicians to answer reference inquiries? The first thing we decided on was the mode of instruction. Ontario Tech was in the process of transitioning from Blackboard to Canvas, and we had been able to get a library sandbox created for us on the new platform. We decided to create a course in Canvas which the technicians could enroll in as students. The course would consist of modules which they could follow at their own pace and revisit as necessary. We divided into teams to create 5 modules, with librarians and reference technicians on each team. Work was managed via Google chat rooms and Google document sharing, and we met weekly online as a team to discuss progress and any problems we were having. It was really beneficial to have the reference technicians involved in the creation process because they are the primary service providers on the reference desk, and they were able to offer input from a different perspective. Unfortunately, halfway through development, our 2 part-time technicians were laid off unexpectedly, which increased the workload on the rest of the team. The goal was to create standard training materials that would be beneficial even after the librarians returned to the library. Each module had 3 to 5 identified learning outcomes. The first 4 modules blend theoretical knowledge with practical instruction in using library resources. The last module focuses on situations that require the technician to refer someone beyond the desk, for example to a librarian or another department. The modules are made up of text, images, videos, and quizzes. We used a combination of original material, open educational resources, and embedded YouTube videos. Each module has embedded assessments, quizzes built in Canvas, that are linked back to the learning outcomes for that module. We don't track the results. They are more of a self-assessment for the benefit of the learner. Some sections have sample reference questions with sample answers, explaining the path to a given resource. However, we state that this is just one way to answer the question. In addition to the quizzes, we embedded some H5P activities to make the learning more engaging. You will see on your screen an example of some interactive content we created using H5P. This was a series of questions that came at the end of a section on scholarly, trade, and popular resources. That section also included text, videos, and links to content examples in our collection. Creating content for Access Services training first appears in meeting minutes on May 6th. We began fleshing out learning outcomes, and on June 3rd, we formed our content development teams. On August 10th, content was submitted to our Associate University Librarian for Scholarly Resources, who oversees the provision of reference services. The course was announced to the library team on August 25th. This was a very quick turnaround. At this time, we were also creating information literacy content in Canvas aimed at students. If you'd like to know more about that process, we are presenting a session called Breaking into the LMS on a Non-Existent Budget on Tuesday, December 8th, from 12:30 to 1:30 as part of this symposium. Normally, new members of the reference team would not be left alone on the reference desk for some time. This ensured that they had an experienced person there to assist them if necessary, but also that there was someone listening to their interactions and offering feedback. Due to the pandemic, the librarians are not able to witness these reference transactions at the moment. Luckily, there is usually a reference technician on the shared service desk along with their circulation counterpart, so there is an experienced person there, but it would be nice to have a better idea of how things are going. There's also just not as many students coming onto campus and into the library, so the technicians aren't getting as much practice as they normally would. However, both of these problems will theoretically resolve themselves once campus returns to normal. The other problem we encountered is that learning preferences differ from person to person. Our modules are independent, asynchronous learning, and that's not ideal for everyone. However, given the restrictions we were under over the summer, there was no way to offer other types of training. At the end of every module, there was a feedback form with 7 questions. In total, we had 34 responses across the 5 modules. We asked a mix of questions, ranging from quantitative ones like, the activities did a good job of testing my understanding of the content with a Likert scale, to open-ended questions like, is there anything you would change about this module? You can see some of the feedback we received on the slide. Generally, it was very favorable. It is important to note, though, that we are a very small team in total. There are only 32 people on staff across all departments. We are aware that there may have been a reluctance to provide critical feedback, and I'm hoping that once we're able to have in-person, one-on-one conversations again with the circulation technicians, we'll be able to get some more nuanced feedback. We have heard from the team who received the training that they would like to build on and practice what they learned in the modules so that the information and skills aren't lost. Some have said that while being told how to do something in the modules was beneficial, it doesn't give them confidence that they will be able to apply that knowledge in a real reference interaction. They would like for the reference librarians to host synchronous online sessions where we can discuss reference questions they have received and work through examples together. Planning has started for these sessions, and we will hopefully be able to start delivering them in January 2021. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. Thank you for your time today.
Hi everyone, my name is Nora Mulvaney and I'm the librarian for Engineering and Architectural Science. I'm going to talk to you today about ASAP asynchronous instruction, creating quick tutorials in Iorad. So what is Iorad? Well, it stands for Instructional Object Rapid Development, but what it is a web and desktop capture tool that auto-generates step text to create professional-looking tutorials very quickly. So it's an online tool that you can use to create tutorials. There are both free and paid accounts or versions of this product available. I've been using Iorad for a couple of years now, and I've only ever used the free account, which I found to be really, really good and really helpful. So I wanted to start by showing you a version of a tutorial that I've created. So this one's about accessing Total Patent 1. And you can see the navigation here is on the side of the screen, and you can go through the tutorial using the arrows on the screen, or you can actually click the step on the screen as well. So where it says click, you can click to get to the next step. And then if it says type, you actually have to type and click enter to get to the next step, which is just kind of fun. So that's a really simple one. It's really just about navigating through different steps to get to the product. This is another one that I've created about using Mendeley with Microsoft Word. And this one was created using the desktop version of the tool. So there is an online version and a desktop version. They work the same way, essentially. I've built this one up a little bit more, just a little bit more instruction to show you that you can do that, but you navigate through them the same way using your arrows here. I've been looking at both of these tutorials in try it mode, but whoever's using your tutorials can also access the tutorial in view it mode, which shows it as sort of a scrollable list. Or there's the option to watch it as a video with pauses between each step. So how can it help you with asynchronous instruction? Well, I would say that Iorad isn't good for everything, for every type of task, but it is really good at doing stuff quickly. So it's great for last minute requests for content. And I know we've probably all been getting a lot of those just with the switch to online teaching, remote working, and because of the pandemic. So Iorad is really good if you need to put together some material quickly. It's easy to create a series of tutorials that students can then work through on their own. I've also used it really successfully for flipped sessions. So I provided students with a couple of Iorad tutorials ahead of the session. And then in the session, I can then spend more time on evaluating results of searches and finding good quality information rather than this is how you navigate a particular database. In terms of features, the free option comes with unlimited web and desktop capture, so you can make as many tutorials as you want. It comes with that auto-generated step text feature, so you don't have to do any, well, you can do some typing, but Iorad will capture your steps for you. You're also able to try every premium feature twice, which is great, but also sometimes a little bit confusing, just because it isn't immediately obvious that you are trying a premium feature. In terms of those premium features, so you can set view permissions, so you can have private tutorials. There's team collaboration options, single sign-on, export options, voiceover, text-to-speech, and tutorial analytics. So would Iorad be useful for you? In terms of the pros, it's really easy, it's really quick to use. There is very little learning curve, and then you can create a tutorial in a minute or a couple of minutes. That auto-generated step text does save you time because you don't have to type out, click here, scroll here, read here. Iorad does that for you. And then I would say that the tutorials look good. So they look very professional, they look very slick. It's something that I'm happy to share with students. They're also really easy to edit. So if you make a mistake, you click the wrong thing or you forget a step, it's easy to go back in and fix them. They're also really easy to share just through links. In terms of the cons, I would say the big one is that those advanced features are restricted to the paid accounts. So there are lots of cool things, additional cool things that you can do with Iorad, but you have to pay for that. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's a character limit for the step text, so for the amount of instruction that you can provide. So if you're trying to do something that does require a lot of instruction, Iorad might not be the right tool for that. It's really best for things that are showing a lot of scrolling, clicking, navigation. That's really what it was built for. Another thing to keep in mind is that the features are subject to change. It is a product that is for profit, so things can change sort of without much notice. For example, that tutorial analytics, one of the premium features, that used to be included for free in every free Iorad account, and then it was recently changed. So it's just something to keep in mind. In terms of the prices, it starts at what I think is already pretty expensive, $100 per month, going up to an absolutely eye-watering $3,200 a month for the full sort of company version of the product. Like I said at the beginning, I've always used the free account and I found it's worked well enough for my needs because this is a very, very pricey product. So I wanted to do a quick demo and show you how easy it is to get started with the tutorial. So I'm just on the library webpage and I've got my Iorad browser extension installed, my plugin. I'm using Chrome. I'm going to click on it to get started, click capture, and then it tells you, close non-essential tabs, do things slowly. And then when you're finished, you just click on the extension again. So I'm just going to do a simple one about navigating to Engineering Village from the library webpage. So I'm just going to click on databases, and then I'm going to find engineering from the subject drop-down list. Let's find that. And then press go. And then click on Engineering Village. And I'm going to do a whole series of tutorials about Engineering Village. So I'm actually going to cut this one off here and say that that's good. This is us getting into Engineering Village. And then I'm going to do other ones about, starting your search, or filtering your results, all of that kind of thing. So this is just to get started. So to edit this tutorial, this is what the editor view looks like. It starts off with, this is what Iorad has captured. The first step is to open Ryerson University Library and click databases. I think that looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. I might go in and hyperlink Ryerson University Library, like just to the web page. But other than that, I'm okay with that. Select subject area, that's looking good. Select engineering, click go, that's all great. Here, it's captured some kind of funny text. So I might go in and edit that, change that to say Engineering Village. And then it says, that's it, you're done. So yeah, I would go in and change that to Engineering Village, but mostly I'm okay with that. If I did want to add in a couple of steps, I have the option to do that here. I can duplicate a step if I want to add a little bit more explanation, and then I can delete a step again if I've made a mistake. But I'm mostly happy with that. So I'm just going to click preview and finish, just so we can have a look at that one that we created in, I'd say probably maybe a minute. You can see you just start back and forth, navigate through it. And that's looking pretty good. And again, that took absolutely no time at all to create. So if you are interested in getting started with Iorad, the sign up link is on the screen. The FAQs are really helpful, but I would also point you towards a blog that they run called the Iorad Life. If I ever want to know how to do something in Iorad, or if it's possible to do something in Iorad, that's where I go. So I hope this has been interesting or helpful, that you think they might be of use for you. Thank you so much for listening. If you do have any questions, I'm happy for you to contact me. It's nmulvaney@ryerson.ca. And thank you very much.